Hey guys, this is my first performance review vlog of the semester, and in it I will be giving you my thoughts on the Metropolitan Opera's most recent production of Turandot. I watched it as one of their nightly opera streams on their website this past weekend. So Turandot tells the story of, well, Turandot. She is the heir to the ancient Chinese throne, and she needs to find a suitor to marry before she can do such a thing. However, she is, let's just say, cold? To put it mildly. Every time she meets a new suitor, well, if she looks them funny, she beheads them. And on top of that, she has 3 riddles that she expects them to figure out and solve if they want to marry her. And if they get any of the riddles wrong, off with their heads. And in the middle of all that chaos, we meet a young man named Kalaf, who he essentially takes one good look at her, he falls in love with her at first sight, and he vows to marry her, and now we have a show. So overall, what did I think of Turandot? I actually really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. If we're gonna talk about what I liked about this opera, the number one thing, my favorite part of this opera was the spectacle. I mean, the set design, the architecture that they were able to build, the lighting, the just overall aesthetic, like, oh my god. It was phenomenal. They were able to recreate ancient China so well, and so many of the sets were just so beautiful to look at. I really enjoyed it. One of my personal favorite examples of just the set design really standing out, in my opinion, is in Act 1, when it's just a hellscape of, just ancient China and all the citizens just being miserable. They live in essentially this hellscape of a country, and they're all living miserable lives. And in the middle of Act 1, when one of Turandot's suitors decides to meet up with her and essentially ask for her hand in marriage, she comes up in this giant golden house that was behind the set the entire time, and the lighting it captured that house in particular. She was just in it. She was just looking at him funny. And she's like, nope, off with her head. And it was just, my mind was blown at how they were able to hide that and just make it seem so beautiful in comparison to just the hellscape that they created. And the hellscape, like, the way they were able to make it was also phenomenal. Then in Act 2, the set for the entire time is pretty much the inside of the castle, where Kalaf essentially tries to woo Turandot. And my god, like, that was even better than the first act. I really enjoyed just how much work they were able to put in to create this architecture and make it really feel like I was in ancient China. It made me feel like I was in the times. I was immersed. So yeah, I gotta say, overall, as far as the spectacle and as far as the set design, as far as the lighting goes, flawless. I really loved it. And all the performances, they're great too. Especially, the standouts in my mind were Ping, Pang, and Pong, yes, those are their names, and Christine Gowerk as Turn. Let me actually start off with Ping, Pang, and Pong first. I will get to Christine Gowerk because she was fantastic, but I want to start off with those 3 guys because I swear, every time they were on screen, I was just rolling. They were hilarious. They really had me going at some points, and the 3 guys, they're these 3 ministers of the imperial household, and they bared witness to every single time Turandot has met one of these suitors and essentially beheaded them. This has happened, I think they say, like a dozen times. And what I think made them so funny for me is that for pretty much the entirety of Act 1, when Kalaf sees Turandot for the first time and falls in love with her at first sight, they're essentially telling him, like, no, dude, like, be realistic here. You just met her. Like, there's no reason to do this. And the guys, all 3 of them, the 3 guys, they had amazing chemistry and amazing voices to boot. The entire cast had amazing voices to boot, I will say. But there was something about these 3 in particular that just, their chemistry gave me a real sense of humanity in this world, especially with how melodramatic and melancholic everything is in this world. They were a source of levity and humor in this overall very melodramatic story. A very good melodramatic story, mind you, but you gotta have those moments of levity in order to keep yourselves invested, and they did really well. But if we're gonna talk about Turandot, let's talk about Christine Gowerk, the person who actually played Turandot. She was lovely. As far as the main roles go, she was easily the standout for me. At first, you don't really think much of Turandot. At least I didn't think very much of Turandot because she doesn't say anything in Act 1. She's essentially just this symbol, and she only appears when a suitor goes to meet her, and she just has this very cold look, like she's very judgmental of the suitors that come to meet her, you know, something like that. And you really don't think much of her other than, you know, she's just out here killing fools. She doesn't really want to get married. She's essentially a darker version of Jasmine from Aladdin. But over the course of time, you start to notice like little tics and little facial expressions about her that really fleshes her out and makes you realize that, yeah, she puts on this wall that's very judgmental and very cold, but inside she's very damaged. Her backstory is very heartbreaking once you find out about it. And I feel like she pulled off those subtleties in revealing her backstory alongside just her voice. Her voice is lovely, by the way. I feel like the combination of those two things really made her stand out to me more than anybody else. And the entire cast was fantastic, I want to say. The music, the orchestra, the performances, the emotion, it was all there. I really found myself immersed, and I found myself caring quite a bit. It's also staged really well, and filmed really well, actually, surprisingly, because I was watching this on my laptop. The way the staging works between characters, I noticed this in particular with Act 3, between Kalaf and Turandot. They have they have a lot of sort of hand gestures, and they look at each other a lot of the time, but it's very, like, hesitant. Like, at this point in the story, we learn more about Turandot, but she's still pretty hesitant about this entire thing. And not only that, the entire just ensemble, they had a huge ensemble for this thing. In Act 1, they were there to play essentially the miserable citizens. They were all dirty. Their costumes were just like bleak. Everything was just like black, and there was pretty much no hope to it. I will say this also, the costume design was also really good. It was amazing. Everything involving the spectacle and the aesthetics, flawless. There were moments of choreography with this ensemble, and they were doing flips, there were moments where one of the executioners would wave their swords at the citizens, and they were just dodging him. The choreography made it look like they were actually, like, getting hurt and getting sliced by the executioner. They were really good. They casted a really good ensemble for this. And not only that, the camera work is also really good. When there's a character giving a solo, it tends to give them sort of a hero shot where it sort of looks up at the character and sort of admires like what they're doing. There were a lot of times in this show that was like that, and I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really breathtaking a lot of times, and there were times when the camera would be panning over to let you see just all of the details involving the ensemble and the sets. It was really masterful directing, I will say. I don't think this production was perfect, however. As far as flaws go, I have very few, but one flaw that I had in particular was there were times where certain actors, again, all of the actors were fantastic, but there were certain times where the actors would essentially sacrifice the emotion in their faces and the emotion of a scene in exchange for having good vocals and making sure they were singing correctly and having, you know, powerful projections and powerful voices. And granted, I'm a singer myself, and I could probably only do half the shit that these guys did. But I do feel like there is a balance they could have been able to strike, and sometimes some of the actors just didn't strike it. Overall, I really did enjoy this production of Turandot. I'm not entirely sure, if you're not into operas, I'm not entirely sure if this will do it for you. If you're not into, like, melodramatic, sort of melancholy stories that break the bounds of reality in a lot of parts, I'm not entirely sure this will be for you, but for me personally, I really enjoyed how much work was put into this. I could definitely tell that the actors were into it. I could definitely tell that the whole crew was into it, the orchestra was into it, the composer was into it, and overall, if they're into it, I'm into it. And that's really all that matters when it comes to a production for me. So, yeah, overall, I really liked it. I guess whenever the world opens back up, go see it if you get a chance.